Imagine your phone buzzes with a notification from your family group chat. You expect a joke or a dinner plan, but instead, you see a wall of text from your own sister. She says you are officially not invited to her wedding because, and I quote, "it is going to be a classy event." She tells the whole family that your presence would ruin the aesthetic she has worked so hard to build. You sit there staring at the screen, heart pounding, as the silence in the chat becomes deafening. But then, your mom types a response that changes everything. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a brutal reality check that turned the entire wedding upside down. This is a story about betrayal, secret wealth, and the moment a pampered princess realized that her classy dreams were built on a foundation of lies. Stick around, because the way this ends is something you will never see coming. My name is Emily, and I have always been the black sheep of the family, at least according to my sister, Sophie. Sophie is 2 years older than me and has spent her entire life acting like she was born in a palace rather than a suburban 3-bedroom house. I am a mechanic. I like getting my hands dirty, I wear flannel, and I value hard work over expensive labels. Sophie, on the other hand, wouldn't be caught dead without her designer handbag and a fresh manicure. We lived in 2 different worlds. Our parents always tried to keep the peace, but Sophie had a way of making me feel small. She would make comments about my greasy hair or my cheap clothes at every holiday dinner. I usually just ignored her, focusing on my own life and my small garage business. I didn't need her approval, but I never expected her to take her elitism to the level she did when she got engaged to a guy named Bradley. Bradley came from a wealthy family, or so Sophie claimed. From the moment they got engaged, Sophie's ego inflated to a dangerous size. Suddenly, everything had to be bespoke and exclusive. She started speaking with a slight accent that she definitely didn't grow up with, and she began cutting people out of her life who didn't fit her new high society image. She was planning the ultimate classy wedding at a historic estate, and the costs were spiraling out of control. I tried to be happy for her, even though she barely spoke to me unless it was to brag about the price of her floral arrangements. I figured I would just show up in a nice dress, sit in the back, and be done with it. But Sophie had other plans. She didn't just want a perfect wedding, she wanted a curated audience. And apparently, a sister who fixed trucks for a living didn't make the cut for her vision of perfection. The day of the text started like any other Tuesday. I was under a 2018 Ford F-150 when my phone started exploding in my pocket. I wiped my hands on a rag and pulled it out. There it was. The family group chat. Sophie had sent a long, rambling message about the final guest list. She said she had been doing a lot of soul-searching and realized that her wedding was an elevated experience. She wrote that she wanted only people who reflected the sophistication and grace of the event. Then came the hammer. "Emily, I think it's best if you don't attend. It's a very classy event, and honestly, your lifestyle and look just don't align with what Bradley's family expects. I don't want to have to worry about you feeling out of place or looking like a disgrace in the photos. Mom and Dad, I know you'll understand why this is necessary for my big day." I felt like the air had been kicked out of my lungs. A disgrace? My own sister was calling me a disgrace in front of our parents. I waited for my dad to say something, but he was always the quiet type who avoided conflict. I felt a hot sting of tears, but I blinked them back. I was more angry than hurt. I had helped Sophie out so many times. I had fixed her car for free for years. I had lent her money when she was between jobs, and I had always defended her when people said she was stuck up. This was how she repaid me. I was about to type back a very angry response when I saw the "mom is typing" bubble. My mom is the sweetest, most patient woman I know. She rarely raises her voice. But as I watched those little dots bounce, I had a feeling that Sophie had finally pushed the wrong button. Mom's response was short, sharp, and absolutely devastating. She wrote, "Sophie, if Emily isn't classy enough to attend your wedding, then my money isn't classy enough to pay for it. I have just called the venue and the caterers. All the checks I wrote are being canceled as of this afternoon. If you want a wedding that reflects your sophistication, I suggest you and Bradley find a way to fund it yourselves. Emily, honey, come over for dinner tonight. We're having steak." I dropped my phone. The group chat went wild. Sophie started calling me and my mom instantly, but mom had already put her phone on Do Not Disturb. Sophie had forgotten one very important detail in her quest for a classy life. Our parents were the ones footing the bill for her six-figure fantasy, and my mom took loyalty very seriously. When I got to my parents' house that night, the atmosphere was thick. My dad looked overwhelmed, but my mom was as calm as a mountain. She told me that she had been watching Sophie's behavior for months and was already disgusted by how she was treating people. The text in the group chat was just the final straw. Mom told me that Sophie had actually been lying to Bradley's family, telling them that we were distant relatives of a European minor noble family. She was trying to build a fake identity, and she viewed me as the evidence that would prove she was just a normal girl from a normal town. By banning me, she was trying to bury the truth of her origins. Mom wasn't going to let her treat her own daughter like a secret shame just to impress some people she barely knew. The next 48 hours were pure chaos. Sophie showed up at the front door, hysterical. Her classy wedding was falling apart. The venue wouldn't hold the date without the final payment, and the florist had already canceled because the deposit check had bounced. She was screaming that Mom was ruining her life, and that Bradley's family would think she was poor. Mom just stood there with her arms crossed and said, "Sophie, you are poor. You have a mountain of credit card debt and no job. We were happy to give you a beautiful wedding because we love you, but we don't love the person you've become. If you can't respect your sister, you don't deserve our support." Sophie looked at me with pure venom, still calling me names, proving she hadn't learned a single thing. Bradley's family eventually found out the truth, and as it turns out, they weren't the snobs Sophie thought they were. Bradley's dad was actually a self-made man who started out in construction. He would have loved me, but when he heard that Sophie had tried to ban her own sister for being trashy, he was horrified. He told Bradley that he wouldn't contribute a cent to the wedding either. Bradley, who was actually a decent guy but a bit spineless, was caught in the middle. Sophie's elevated experience was quickly turning into a logistical nightmare. She had no venue, no flowers, and most importantly, no one willing to pay for her delusion. She tried to send a fake apology to the group chat, but it was so transparently about the money that it only made things worse. The most advanced part of this drama was the secret I had been keeping. While Sophie was busy pretending to be rich, my garage business had actually taken off. I had landed a contract with a major logistics firm to maintain their fleet. I wasn't just fixing trucks. I was running a multi-million-dollar operation. I hadn't told anyone because I didn't want the attention, and I liked my simple life. I was actually the one who had been funneling money to my mom so she could afford to pay for Sophie's wedding in the first place. Mom knew, of course, but Sophie had no clue. She was calling the person who was literally funding her dream a disgrace. When Mom told her the truth about where the wedding money was coming from, Sophie's face turned a shade of pale I didn't know was possible. Sophie's reaction to the news of my success was a mix of disbelief and greed. She immediately pivoted, trying to play the sisterhood card. She started texting me privately, saying she was so proud of me and that she was just stressed when she sent that text. She even suggested that since I was so successful, I should probably pay for the whole wedding myself as a gift to her. I didn't even reply. I just blocked her number. It was the most satisfying thing I had ever done. The girl who thought I was too low-class to sit at her table was now begging for my low-class money to save her reputation. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a wrench. The wedding didn't happen at the historic estate. It happened 6 months later in a small town hall. Bradley stayed with her, but the relationship was strained. None of Bradley's high society friends showed up because there was no champagne or fancy caviar. It was just a simple ceremony. Sophie wore a dress she bought on clearance, and she looked miserable the entire time. My parents went because they are better people than I am, but I stayed at the shop. I had a job to finish, and frankly, I had already spent enough time and money on Sophie's drama. She still tries to post photos on Instagram making the town hall look like a 5-star resort, but everyone knows the truth. This experience taught me a lot about the different types of class. Sophie thought class was something you could buy with a credit card or prove with a seating chart. She thought it was about who you excluded. But my mom showed me that real class is about loyalty, integrity, and standing up for the people who have your back. Sophie lost her dream wedding, but she lost something much more valuable: the respect of her family. She's now living in a small apartment, working a retail job she hates, and still trying to convince herself that she's better than everyone else. Meanwhile, I'm still in my flannel, still getting grease under my fingernails, and building a legacy that she will never understand. The fallout also changed my relationship with my parents. My dad finally found his voice and told Sophie he was disappointed in her, which hit her harder than anything my mom said. We became a tighter unit, minus the toxic element that Sophie brought into every room. My business continued to grow, and I used some of that classy money to take my parents on a vacation they actually deserved, one where no one was banned and everyone was welcome. We went to a mountain resort, wore hiking boots, and ate burgers. It was the least classy event Sophie could imagine, and it was the best time we ever had. We laughed until our ribs hurt, finally free from the shadow of Sophie's constant judgment. In the end, the classy event text was the best thing that could have happened. It exposed the rot in our family dynamic and allowed us to cut it out. Sophie is still out there somewhere, probably complaining about the aesthetic of her coffee shop, but she doesn't haunt my life anymore. If there is one thing you should take away from this, it's that you should never let someone make you feel small just because your hands are dirty and theirs are clean. Dirt washes off, but a lack of character is permanent. Sophie wanted a wedding for the books, and she got one, just not the kind she can ever brag about. Thanks for listening to this story of revenge and reality. If you've ever been excluded by family, remember, sometimes not being invited is the biggest blessing in disguise.